Welcome back to our YouTube channel. This is Narayan Rao Kaur. In this video, we are going to explain methods of measurements of price elasticity of demand. Methods of measurements of price elasticity of demand. There are four methods. One is point method. Second one is proportionate method. Third one is arc method. Fourth one is total outlay method. There are four methods. So now let us examine first point method. Point method. This method was introduced by Alfred Marshall. Point method of elasticity was introduced by Alfred Marshall. This method also known as geometric method. Geometric method. Next. When this method was used to measure price elasticity of demand means, one is at a particular point on the demand curve. At a particular point on the demand curve. This method is used to measure price elasticity of demand at a particular point on the demand curve. That is one point. Second one is when derivatives are given. When derivatives are given to measure price elasticity of demand, point method is applied. Third one is change in price is infinitesimal. Change in price is infinitesimal, very small, very negligible. To measure price elasticity of demand, point method is applied. Next, elasticity to refer to point elasticity. ఎకానమిస్టుల యొక్క అభిప్రాయం ప్రకారం ఎలాస్టిసిటీ అంటే పాయింట్ ఎలాస్టిసిటీ అని అర్థం. ఎకానమిస్టుల యొక్క అభిప్రాయం ప్రకారం ఎలాస్టిసిటీ మీన్స్ పాయింట్ ఎలాస్టిసిటీ, రైట్? సో uses derivatives EP is equal to minus dq by dp into p by q. EP is equal to minus dq by dp into p by q. When derivatives are given to measure price elasticity of demand, so point method is applied. Next, it is the product of price quantity ratio at a point on the demand curve. Product of price quantity ratio means slope of the demand curve. Slope of the demand curve. Slope of the demand curve is, that is product of price quantity ratio is equal to, so delta P by delta Q. Change in the price by change in the quantity. Slope of the demand curve. Change in the price by change in the quantity. Whereas reciprocal of the slope of the demand curve. Reciprocal means reverse. Slope of the demand curve ke reverse. Slope of the demand curve is delta P by delta Q. Reciprocal of that slope of the demand curve is equal to delta Q by delta P. Delta Q by delta P. So very very important point. It is the product of price quantity ratio at a particular point on the demand curve. Product of price quantity ratio is equal to slope of the demand curve. Slope of the demand curve is equal to delta P by delta Q. Change in the price by change in the quantity. Whereas reciprocal of the slope of the demand curve is equal to reverse. So delta Q by delta P. That means change in the quantity by change in the price అని చెప్పొచ్చు. Next. This is the introduction to the point method to measure price elasticity of demand. Next, what is the formula to measure price elasticity of demand under point method? EP is equal to lower segment by upper segment. EP is equal to lower segment by upper segment, or EP is equal to the distance from the point to x-axis divided by the distance from the point to y-axis. So now the demand curve is linear or the demand curve is non-linear. How to measure price elasticity of demand? Point 1. Demand curve is linear or straight line demand curve. Demand curve is linear or straight line demand curve. So when the demand curve is linear or straight line demand curve, slope of the linear demand curve is constant. డిమాండ్ కర్వ్ అనేది స్ట్రైట్ లైన్ గా ఉంటుంది, డౌన్వర్డ్ స్లోపింగ్ లో ఉంటుంది. ఇక్కడ స్లోప్ అనేది కాన్స్టెంట్ గా ఉంటుంది. సో స్లోప్ ఆఫ్ ద లీనియర్ డిమాండ్ లైన్ ఈజ్ కాన్స్టెంట్, ఫిక్స్డ్. సో elasticity is different at different points on a linear demand curve due to price and quantity also different. Price and quantity also changes. So very very important point. Elasticity is different at different points on a linear demand curve due to price and quantity changes. If you observe the diagram, so at point it touches y-axis is equal to infinity. Above midpoint greater than 1, at midpoint is equal to 1, below midpoint less than 1, demand curve touches x-axis, EP is equal to 0. So elasticity is at different points at a particular point at a particular point on the demand curve because price and quantity also changes. Price and quantity also different. That is why elasticity is different at different points on a linear demand curve because price and quantity also different. Now, price elasticity of demand is equal to 1 by slope into P by Q. 1 by slope into P by Q. The formula EP is equal to lower segment by upper segment. Lower segment by upper segment. So, point method can be explained with the help of this diagram. Demand curve is linear. So draw L shape, mark YOX, price is measured on y-axis, quantity demand is measured on x-axis. So elasticity at point A, so EP is equal to infinity. That what is lower segment? AE by AA. So elasticity is equal to infinity. At point B, what is elasticity? BE by lower segment BE by BA. That is greater than 1. At point C, CE by CA. So EP is equal to 1. At point D, so DE by DA. Then that is EP less than 1. At point E, elasticity is E by EA. That means lower segment by upper segment. Lower segment by upper segment. If we observe that demand curve touches y-axis here. Demand curve touches y-axis. Elasticity is infinity. At midpoint is equal to 1. Above midpoint greater than 1. Below midpoint less than 1. Demand curve touches x-axis, EP is equal to 0. So here, one of the very very important point is elasticity becomes smaller as we move downwards. As we move downwards, elasticity becomes smaller. As we move upwards, elasticity becomes greater and greater. So 0, less than 1 is equal to 1, greater than 1, infinity. So elasticity becomes smaller as we move downwards and elasticity becomes greater as we move upwards. Right, this is demand curve is linear. Demand curve is linear. So a straight line demand curve, the demand curve is non-linear. Demand curve is non-linear or curvilinear. Demand curve is non-linear or curvilinear. Slope of the demand curve is changes. Slope changes. Slope changes. Right. Formula is EP is equal to lower segment by upper segment. Lower segment by upper segment. Formula is the same. Whether the demand curve is linear or non-linear, formula is same to measure price elasticity of demand. But a tangent must be drawn. A tangent must be drawn. That is, if you observe this diagram, draw L shape, mark YOX, Price is measured on y-axis, quantity demand is measured on x-axis, AB is tangent. A tangent must be drawn. Then, if you want to measure price elasticity of demand at point C, so draw the demand curve, DD demand curve at point C. Suppose a price elasticity at point C is equal to lower segment by upper segment, CB by CA, lower segment CB, upper segment CA. So, whether the demand curve is linear, the demand curve is non-linear, formula is same to measure price elasticity of demand. EP is equal to lower segment by upper segment. So, thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe and comment.